I see it. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Dustin. He's Justin. We're excited to be with you on this fine day and talk about a topic that's near and dear to both of our hearts, and that is podcast guesting, and specifically leveraging podcast guesting in a really fun way to grow your business. And so I'm Dustin Reekman. I run a company called Seven Figure Leap. I'm going to kind of kick us off today, talking really briefly about why podcast guesting and sort of our approach to doing this strategically well, and talk about what we found in doing this exclusively for clients for 4 years are the key components to not just doing podcast guesting effectively, but actually using it to drive business results and grow profits in your company. And so I'm going to go through that sort of at the 10,000 foot view, and then we're going to let Justin zoom into his area of expertise and how we can leverage this in some specific ways. So let me share my screen and we can get right into it. Screen 2. All right. Should be prompting us. There we go. All right. So I got 3 quick slides. And so the first one here, if you showed up for an event like this or you're watching a recording, I probably have to sell you too hard on that podcast guesting is a good thing to do, because this is a pretty specific topic. But I think I take a little deeper view in what podcast guesting makes possible for a business. So these kind of 3 big buckets. Marketing is probably the one that is most obvious. That's probably why you showed up here. Is podcast guesting is a good way to get leads for your business. It's a good way to grow your authority and your credibility. There's some really strong signals that I think Justin will talk about a little bit more in the SEO and now AI, EO, however you want to AEO, GEO, whatever you want to call it, AI search. In the middle bucket, I call business. I sort of separate these two, and that podcast guesting, unlike most marketing channels, is actually also a direct path to sales. So you get interviewed on someone's podcast, you've told the right stories and really set up the right environment of trust and belief. People will buy from you immediately in some cases, and the interviews live on for a long time, and they're usually on multiple platforms. And as we're going to talk about a little bit deeper, there's a lot of ways to repurpose that effort. And so you get both direct, immediate sales and long-term sales. And you also really exercise your clarity muscle, and you get better at your messaging because you're being interviewed multiple times about the thing that you're an expert at. And that's a really powerful, I think, undervalued part of why podcast guesting is a unique mechanism. And then the third one is my absolute favorite, and you're going to see this show up in my my next 2 slides. I always tell people podcast guesting on the surface is a really good marketing tactic. What it really is, though, if you do it right, is a way to build high quality relationships at scale. So the way I view this is we're just planting seeds of relationship every time we do an interview, and we're producing new assets and content and things for our business. And over time, that creates a real exponential growth. And we're going to talk about in a second here the flywheel effect that comes when you do that well. So that's sort of the why. And then this is our how. So this is our framework for when we work with clients, and anything that you see from me on LinkedIn typically kind of falls into this 5P framework, as we call it. And what I would say about this quickly is I usually hear from people who say one of 2 things. I stumbled my way into a podcast guesting appearance. I sold a coaching package. That was pretty awesome, but I don't know how to do this on purpose. Or I hear people say, hey, I've been on 100 podcasts this year. I'm really good at it. And I say, well, that's amazing. Like, what did it do for your business? And they say, I don't know. Or like, not much, right? Because they're missing a key component of the monetization side. And so when we work through this process, and I won't obviously go through these in detail, but happy to answer questions about it at the end of our workshop time, we start very intentionally with purpose and getting clear on why do you want to do podcast guesting? What are the goals for your business? Who are you trying to reach? And what is the transformation you provide your client, so we can provide the right messaging for that. Then we get into which shows, how to get on those podcasts, how to actually show up and be effective in the interview. And then we spend a lot of our time with clients on how do you leverage those right appearances to actually grow your business with leads and sales. And so this is sort of the big framework. And a key part of this 5th step is the last thing I'm going to show before I turn it over to Justin. And that is this flywheel effect. And so the way I like to navigate this, I don't have to get into like a definition of a flywheel and all those things, but just think, if you're on the right podcast and you tell the right story and you teach the right thing and you have the right call to action, numerous things follow. There's sort of 7 components of value that get created. First and foremost, you should be growing your email list with it, right? Because you're going to invite people to access a lead magnet and additional value, go deeper with you, and opt into your email newsletter to do that. As I already mentioned, you can absolutely create both immediate and long-term sales. And then this part of the wheel is where the relationships really come to life. So not only are you speaking to listeners and attracting listeners as potential clients, which kind of fall into these two pieces, you now have the relationship with a host who is an influencer in your industry by definition of their role as a podcast host, right? And by being on someone else's podcast, you've now got basically permission to build relationships with the other guests. And it's no longer like a cold thing. It's a warm thing because you're sort of in the cool kids club together. It's like, oh, we've all been on the same podcast. So if I reach out to you, there's an implied trust, right? Because we've done that together. Then we're creating a lot of great content. I'm not going to talk much about this because Justin's going to talk a lot about it. And all of these things seek to or result in growing your authority. And the reason, though, this is a flywheel effect is if you do like one podcast, this is true. But where it gets really, really powerful is when you do this repeatedly, because you build a lot of momentum. So if I just tell you, hey, do one podcast interview a week, right? And that may be a little extreme for some people, but just as an example, basically 50 interviews a year, it's no longer a 1-1-1. It's 50 interviews, 50 evergreen sources to grow your email list, 50 different places to generate sales. And now you know 50 different hosts, and you've created a relationship with 50 different people in your target industry. You got 50 guest lists to build relationships with, 50 sources of content, right? Which greatly increases your authority. And the reason this is considered a flywheel effect is because I have more authority, it's easier to get on the next podcast, and I can get on bigger podcasts, right? And so this is why it's like a virtuous loop. And as you do this repeatedly, it creates exponential growth. And so that's sort of the preface I wanted to share. We focus on really 6 of these 7 boxes when we work with clients. We don't do as much with content repurposing, which is why I was really excited to partner with Justin because he does. And so he's going to be able to take us into a deeper dive specifically on these two boxes of creating more great content from your podcast guesting and be able to build your authority in a faster way from it. So Justin, if you have questions for me, that's great. Otherwise, if you want to take it from here, we can answer questions at the end. That would be
we'll take questions. If you're watching this right now, you're like, I got a question on this, and we were taking questions ahead of time. We'll address a few of them as we go here along. I know I've got a question here from Marilyn, a couple other general questions that we'll dive into. But yeah, Justin, it's so fascinating to me how this makes sense when you talk about it. Yet I think so many people don't realize they do have it's kind of like mining for gold and mining and accidentally finding gold versus all right, we found the gold. Now how do we find more gold?
Yes.
I was just in the UP of Michigan for vacation last week, and that was a theme up there. Is there was always copper in the ground, and the Native Americans knew about it, and they had these pit mines, and then Norwegians and Swedes came along and with mining systems, and they're like, here's the copper that Native Americans found. We have a system. Let's go chase the copper now deep instead of randomly putting holes in the ground. And that's what it stands out to me about what you're talking about, is creating a system around something so you can actually scale. And honestly, that's easier. It's just as fun. I think a lot of entrepreneurs forget that having system doesn't mean it has to be, shackles on your hands or, boring. It can actually be quite fun. And so I'm a big proponent of the system. It was kind of cool when we met and I realized, whoa, this is like the system I use. And I didn't realize there was like a whole framework around it.
Yep.
That being said, this is where a lot of the systems break apart and kind of drop the ball. And I'll share here my screen. Which is we're leaving ROI on the table, a lot of money on the table. And that comes down to that 7th part you mentioned, Dustin, which is once you have the assets, what do you do with them? And there are so many great talks that go completely unknown because all we're doing maybe is we're posting one time, if we even do that, and we put a little link to the podcast and we say, have a listen. And honestly, I don't know if you guys noticed this. Most people, if I'm scrolling on LinkedIn, I'm not going to go click on your link and go listen to a 1-hour podcast. I'm scrolling on LinkedIn for 5 minutes and then I'm going back to what I was doing. So you're probably not going to get a lot of traction with just a little mention of the podcast, unless it's a big podcast, a big name brand that has some worth, right? It counts as another logo or you're kind of like, hey, look at this cool person, and I get to be, like you said, Dustin, I get to be part of the cool kids club by being with them. That's helpful for authority. But most podcasts aren't like that. So I run a podcast. My podcast is certainly not like that. Nobody gets to name drop me or my podcast. But the way we do it with our podcast and the way I encourage our clients who do this is we're going to dive into that here. So let's see if I get the little thing to work with the slides. All right. So this is probably the challenge we're all running into, is that we're getting on podcasts and we're having great one-on-one conversations, but then we look at what we get back and we find out, oh, there's no video. It's just audio. How do you use that? Is that even worthwhile? You get the video back. It's pixelated. It's really it's not kind of hitting the quality you would want to publish out there. Maybe the clips, you do get clips back. Sometimes that happens. I know that's become more and more normal, especially with AI editors making a lot of this more feasible, even for non-professional editors. So anybody's an editor now. And so as a result, you're getting these AI clips back. But the problem with anyone being an editor is that the clips aren't necessarily edited the way you would want. And you don't get control over that, because it's just, here you go, see you later. Sometimes the hosts don't share the files on time or correctly. This has happened to me so many times. I go back and I'm like, wait, I was on a podcast 6 months ago. What the heck happened to that? And then you finally get the files back. You finally get notified, even if maybe sometimes you don't even get notified. Another issue we see, and this is more of a thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, is you get poorly framed or cropping. So you don't realize as you get on a podcast that it's just a talking head. You're cut off here at the neck. And that's a really hard video to edit. Nobody likes to watch just the talking, just your head. There needs to be more to it than that. So there's a matter of taste there. Maybe you're not aware of, or maybe you are, but you forgot to do it in the session. And then one of the other challenges when you're on a podcast and you want to use that asset now as a clip, is obviously you don't have time or desire to edit, write, and publish. Because I don't think we often forget, it's not just editing the video, it's also writing the post that goes with the video, and it's also publishing. So there's like layers here we're talking about. And this is why I think, Dustin, a lot of this step gets completely overlooked, is because we kind of look at it and we go, I ain't got time for that. Where's the ROI in that? Well, here's the good news, guys. We have a couple systems we're going to talk about that actually dives right into that. And these are DIY. You can DIY these. These are systems. I'm giving them to you. One's an IDEO, one's a system. And then, and this is what we do. So the other problem is, if you don't own this problem, if you don't decide to go after the 7th part of Dustin's framework and say, well, we're just not going to touch that, we're just going to focus on the one, like, you are still hidden. Like I talked about before, you show up to the call, you have a great relationship with the person, you can still go after the guest of that podcast. Those are really, really good strategies. But on LinkedIn, nobody knows you're on podcast. Nobody sees that clip from what you're doing. You are still, it's like you're starting from scratch every time you reach out to a new podcast. All you have is a cold email. And you might be able to name drop a couple podcasts. Hopefully they recognize the name of the podcast, but you have no proof that you've ever been on these podcasts consistently. And I'm a podcast host. You know what happens when somebody reaches out to me to be on my content marketing podcast? Guess what the first thing is? I go to their LinkedIn profile and I see, do they have clips? I don't go look at, all these, I don't have time to look up all these podcasts I've never heard of. I go to their LinkedIn profile. I want to know within 30 seconds, can I see anything on there that talks about what I want to talk about, which is content marketing? Do you have a cool angle? And are you actually interesting on camera? Do you have something worth sharing? Or are you super cringy? Do I have to lead you across the line, pull you across the line to get anything out of you? So that's, you're still hidden. Zero proof, like I talked about. And then, like I said before, you have no control over how well your content gets packaged up, edited, and promoted. So if you say, well, I'm going to podcast guest and that's going to take care of my promotion or a big chunk of it, that's like saying I'm going to, throw my bread out into the street and then, hope that I get a sandwich back. Like, it doesn't work, guys. That's a really terrible analogy.
King of the analogies this morning, Justin.
Yeah, I'm a big, sometimes they're hit or miss. I usually come up with them off the top of my head, but it's a very silly way to think. There's no system. You have no control. So you want to own this problem. And the good news is you can. And then the last thing you mentioned, you hinted at it, Dustin, which is you're less likely to show up in AI and Google search results. This is just a quick citation you can see here on the screen from an AI overview. Fun fact, the more places you put your content on the internet, the more likely you are to show up in Google search and in AI search. It's just that simple. It is like a spray, and it's kind of like a spray it out, and then you're more likely to get cited. Now, there's more to it than that, But a lot of people forget, when you just focus on one type of content, one type of platform, you are completely missing out on all these other slices of the pie that is the internet. So if you're not turning your podcast into clips, into short form content, into blog posts and things like that, you're going to be missing out on a lot of AI and Google search results. And you might be surprised, but yes, your short form clips on YouTube do get cited by AI. They do count. A lot of people have that question. AI, YouTube Shorts, and even TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn, as long as it's got enough text, they all are eligible for AI search results. A lot of people are surprised to find that. It doesn't have to just be long form webinar content like what we're doing right now. So you don't want to miss out on the future buyers who are looking for you, or buyers looking for you even today. So you can control your recording quality. I promise you can. I'm going to give you a tip, a simple advice. You're going to be like, oh, why did I never think of that? It is super easy to do. I'm going to share that example here shortly. And then you can also get a system over motivation to produce future clips and to produce like a flywheel, like Dustin said. Like it just happens. It just happens every time you do this. And it's not AI based. It is a system. It does take time or money or both, but it is a system. I'm going to give you the same system I use and that our clients use for publishing all that content, so they can avoid being invisible and they can avoid having clips back that they're not happy with, and they can be happy with it every time. So these are both possible to solve that seventh part. The first part, and this is the tip part, how do you get control over the recording quality, Justin? How do you make sure that you are framed right, you're cropped right, your lighting is good, all those kinds of things? You can record yourself off camera whenever you go on a podcast with your phone. Most phones, if it's made in the last 3-4 years, has a selfie camera that shoots in 4K. A lot of people are surprised by that, but it's true. And so what you can do, I didn't do it this session, but often what I even do, if I show up on a podcast or if I'm doing a presentation, sometimes I present to groups and stuff online, I will have not just my camera, this is my DSLR. I have a DSLR, but you can have a webcam. Now I don't just have my webcam pointing at me, recording in Zoom or whatever. I have my phone off to the side, pointed at me, ideally on a tripod. So I get the nice, it's eye level and I can frame it just right, just the way I want. And I hit record at the start of the presentation, and then I forget about it. And then presentation's over, hang up. Good to see you. Thanks. I go over to my phone, hit stop, and I got a 30, 60 minute 4K quality recording ready to go. Now you might say, well, what about the audio and things like that? Well, the good news is with AI, you can now edit audio to sound pretty freaking amazing. We have stopped recommending our clients use microphones on all of their shoots and stuff because we also do this on a monthly basis. We record these short form videos with them every month, just because of the hassle setting up isn't worth it, because we have this AI stuff that a lot of these are free tools. Like I think it's Adobe Podcast now. It used to be called Adobe Audio Enhance. And you can really dial in how the audio sounds. You can get rid of the reverb and you can make a crappy microphone sound really good. Now it's not obviously going to ever be as good as a professional mic, but it's just, it does just enough that you're not going to be distracted by the reverb or anything. So that's the first one. If you want more control over the quality you get back, just do it off angle, like you can see here in these two screens. I started doing that, and Gary Vee copied me.
Darn Gary Vee. Yeah.
Gary Vee, he's always copying me all the time. But you can see here, I'm just kidding. He started doing it. He's the one that popularized this method. People are like, wait, you can do that? Yes, you can do whatever you want, guys. It's a free world. There's no rules. So you just take your camera, you put it off to the side. In this case, you can see I was looking off to the side there at the webcam at the time, and I was recording on my phone. You can do the exact same thing, and you're guaranteed to get the framing you want, everything. It's a beautiful method, and you've got this file. Guess what? You can start using it right away. You don't have to wait 6 months to get the files back, and then they're too crappy to use. So that's the first method, is use your phone off camera to record the video. Then you're not beholden to somebody else's system. You can own your own. Make sense? Drop your questions, by the way, if you have questions. And you can see Gary Vee is doing the same. He's having a conversation across the table, and we got a shot of him off angle here. In the world of video, by the way, this is called A cam and B cam. A cam is the one you look into. B cam is the one that is the one that looks at you from the side. So very typical method. You'll notice that all the time now. In television, happens everywhere. You'll notice your radio hosts, your radio anchors, or video anchors, they do it too. All right, so that's the first one. How do you get control of the quality and so you can produce clips consistently? Use your phone off angle. And you can see I've done it here. Did this little thing, guys. You can see it's recording. You can do it down here. You can have it underneath you. You can have it above. I recommend having it eye levels. Get yourself a little desktop tripod. They're $10 on Amazon. In this case, I didn't, but you can easily solve that with a tripod. I sit and put mine off to the side and just hit record. All right. So this is the process I promised. So let's say you got a great recording. Okay, you got 60 minutes. What do you do with that? Is it just going to sit on your phone? Is it just going to sit on a hard drive? Probably, unless you take a little bit of time and money to solve this problem. And this is a problem that is worth spending money to solve. Again, because you are leaving money on the table if you're not publishing your content online in all the places. It's just sitting in one single area, like on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and places like that. And so this is the process we use. I'll walk you through it. First step, you get that 60-minute file over to your editor. In my case, we use Dropbox. You might use Drive. You might use something else. That's the place where all the raw files stay. So that good news is on a phone, by the way, if you use Dropbox, your phone, the basic setting is to automatically back up your photos and videos to Dropbox. Mine automatically backs up to Dropbox. So while the session's going and hit stop, I wait a few hours. Guess what? The file's backed up. And all I have to do is move it over to the folder for my editor to have access. That takes me 30 seconds. So then my editor will do one of two things. He will either use an AI editor and he'll run it through, like we use Riverside, for example. Riverside creates what they call magic clips. You might know of Opus clips. They do the same thing. Descript, yep. The AI editor now has this. They just call it something different. He will either upload it there and let the automatic clip function occur, and then he will review it. That's step number 2 himself. You always need a human to do this. This is why, by the way, when you get those clips back from the podcast and you're like, wait, that didn't sound right at all. They didn't have anybody review it. You still need a human with judgment and taste to review it, or it just is mostly crap. So he'll either use an AI editor, but honestly, if you work with a good editor, someone's been doing this for years, like our editor, it takes them just as long or faster for them to just go. It's crazy watching him work. 2x the speed on the video, and he can hear it and he can find those clips himself, mark them, and he's done. So he'll use one of those 2 methods. You can use the AI editor method if you don't have a professional editor on your team. By the way, I don't recommend doing any of this. I recommend your VA do this or somebody on your team do this, because you will never do this. I never do this. I hate doing this. And I'm a video agency. So this system depends on you delegating, okay? So spend the money and time delegating this system. Screenshot this, send it to your team. Say, all right, let's make this happen. Troubleshoot how to make it happen. AI editor, then you review it. You have a human review it. I have a 17-year-old daughter. She does QA in our business for all of our clients, for all my videos. And you get somebody who's watched enough short videos. It doesn't matter what they enjoy in life or what they're doing. They're going to have a sense of judgment just from the sheer amount of volume of videos they've watched. So maybe get your own 17-year-old daughter like I do to review it. They'll say, this is weird. That caption was off, right? You want to look for typos. AI is notorious for putting the wrong words in there for captions. That's a common, especially if acronyms or if business names, things like that. Humans say a lot of things in a funny way. I mean, I'm one of them. I'll raise my hand first and say I do all the time, stumble over our words. And the caption software doesn't always know how to keep up. So you need a human to review not just captions, but also if there's a funny cut or whatever. And then to finalize the edit manually. So you do need a human with at least a little bit of awareness of how to edit, to tweak the edits just a bit. Maybe it's to change the captions. Maybe it's to move the cut up a half second so that there's not this weird breathing noise and then they start, whatever. There's always that micro 10, 20% edit that needs to happen. A lot of people forget that. You can't just run it through AI and say it's good to go. Always need human judgment. And then you need somebody, you or someone on your team, to write the post. This is just like posting anything else to LinkedIn or to any other platform. Yeah, you can't have a video without context. By the way, if you post a video on LinkedIn without context, without text, it doesn't get cited by AI, because there's no way right now for LinkedIn videos to be cited by AI. YouTube videos, yes, and other platforms, I believe, but not LinkedIn videos. So you need an equivalent text post to go with the video. The second reason you want that on LinkedIn specifically, is because a lot of people still don't watch video on LinkedIn. They're not used to it. They don't want to. They go, I'm a grumpy old person and I just read. All right. So then you need to have a written portion for those people as well. I'm a reader, by the way. Sometimes I completely skip the video if it's taking too long. So I'm just including myself in the grumpy old person demographic. So you need to have at least a teaser, like some people, blah, 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 blah. That here's why that can't work. Watch the video for more, right? You need to have something. So you need to write it, then upload it. And I recommend using a publishing tool. In our agency, we use Loomly, but there are other ones out there, many, many other ones that are just fine. And you want to write it, upload it, and then publish it everywhere. And this is where you get the AI citations, because you can publish it to Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. That's where all my videos go. If it exists as a platform, odds are I'm publishing there. And I get random people coming to me all the time, like, I saw you, Grok recommended you. I don't even post I do post to X. Wait, I do post to X. Just don't even have a following there, but Grok still recommended me. So that's where you got to upload it to all the places using a tool like that. A VA should know how to do that. And then, of course, you want to make sure you get the final say, at least for the first month or two. Spend a little bit of time just quick reviewing everything and going, yeah, this is right. Or no, actually, I would change this. And then after a while, you'll just, like I do, it's like it takes me 30 seconds. Oh, looks good, publish. Oh, looks good, publish. Once your team gets dialed in terms of what the content should look like. So that's the system. This is not an AI, like, do everything for you guys. If you've ever heard of something like that, it will either break or it won't work perfectly. But we need to show up at our best consistently. So you do need humans to do that for you, because humans bring the judgment. AI does not have judgment. Maybe someday there'll be a system that does all that automatically. Maybe it's already out there, but I haven't found it. So that's the system I recommend. We use it with humans. The only place AI has in this system is the AI editor and then the AI audio. Anything stand out to you there, Dustin, about the process?
No, I mean, I think just as someone who's guested several hundred times, and what you open with is very true in that it's very hit or miss if you get anything from a host, or even if they notify you. I would say more and more often you do get something from a host and their clips, but they're missing the human judgment part. And so I really what I liked about this as a system and a principle is like control your own destiny, like capture your own video so that you can make yourself look as good as possible and be able to publish this all the places. Don't just be dependent on the host to give you what you need, because they're probably not going to give you what you need. And it's going to be hit or miss and haphazard. And so it's hard to be systematic, right? But if you're like, hey, every time I go live and record content, or I'm a guest on someone's podcast, or I'm hosting my own podcast, I'm capturing this kind of side 4K video on my phone.
Yeah.
And it always goes to the same place. And I've got a VA in the flow to replicate it each time. I think that's a huge value add to really capitalize on that seventh piece of the flywheel that is in most cases, I would say, not even just many, I'd say in most cases, is underutilized.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I agree. So this is what it looks like. This is you're playing a long-term game, by the way. When you talk about ROI and something like this, you hinted at it, Dustin, with relationship building.
Yeah,
it's very rare to get married after the first date in real life. I don't know if you've noticed that, dear viewer, but the same thing applies with B2B. It's very rare to get a sale after the first listen or the first watch, especially if it's a short video. It's more likely in a longer video. So this is a long-term play. This is who can run the longest well wins. This is a long-term mentality. This is not I'll try it for 3 months to see where it works. If your sales cycles take 9 to 12 months in general, you're not going to see results for another 2 years, because people aren't going to see it and they're not going to be able to follow you and not reach out for a sales call and then take another 9 to 12 months to buy in 3 months, right? Kind of makes sense when you realize that. So this is what it kind of looks like in the wild on my profile. This is a process I've decided to own. Years ago, I told myself, just trust the process. It's been so good because I get on those podcasts, Dustin, to your point, with those hosts. There's still hosts from podcasts that still like my stuff today from years ago, because we're connected on LinkedIn and I'm still posting clips and they're like, oh, that's so true. And so this is a great method for staying top of mind with a large network at scale. All right. You can pay, you can do this or you can hire us. This is my call to action. Dustin, you've got yours here, but we do a 60-second, $60 per clip. To get those clips, you send us the files and we take care of that whole process. $60 a clip. or $100 per clip if you want us to actually edit and then also write and post for you. So you send us a 1 hour video. You say you want 3 clips, $300, and we'll have 3 video posts ready to go out on LinkedIn and YouTube, all those places for you. Or your first one's free. So if you're like, I'm not sure about this process, how would it even look? We understand that. So reach out to me. You can DM me here on LinkedIn or put a comment anywhere, and I'll reach out to you, and we'll get your first one done free. Just all we need to get started is your one, any kind of video podcast you've been on, and we can use that, and you can see how it goes. Dustin, what about you? Where should people think about working with you?
I'll pop this in chat, but if you're looking, zoom back out kind of to where I started, and you're like, oh, podcast guesting, I need a more holistic strategy. Like that's where we live, is working with coaches and consultants, helping them create a strategy and a system around podcast guesting. So helping you get clear on your message and who you're trying to reach. Those 5 Ps that I had up, right? The purpose, and then the plan, finding the right shows, the pitch, like getting on the shows, perform, what do you do when you're on the shows, and then the profit piece. We've put together a playbook. And so if you go to 7figureleap.com/playbook, pretty simple, it's free. And my whole business model is basically to give you all the knowledge and all the frameworks, and you're going to get one action to take on each of those 5 Ps to be able to start getting results for yourself. And then if you're like, I really like this is something I want to go deeper with, I want Dustin's personal help, I'd love to do this in a community of other people who are founders who are doing this, that's what we get paid for. But this is totally free. So if you go to 7figureleap.com/playbook, you get a great deep dive into podcast guesting strategy and start making a lot of progress towards this on your own.
Cool. And we do have time. I do have time, if you do, Dustin, for a couple more minutes if you want to answer some questions. We had one here from Marilyn. Her question is around CTAs when posting. She wants to promote her assessment or her workshop. How often should she be including CTAs, which are calls to action, when posting videos or podcast guesting related content? And if at all?
Good question. I'll kind of handle the podcast interview part of it, and then Justin, you can talk about, because this like post interview and you're repurposing clips and all those things, like when is it appropriate to have those calls to action in the interview itself. You kind of get one shot at that, right? So what I would say is really important there is you want to have one call to action, very clear. I just demonstrated it, but like one clear URL, simple call to action that anyone who's interested in going deeper can go take action on. And the reason that's important to do in the interview is because it's not just in the moment of the interview, but in that evergreen flow, you always want people to be able to come back and take that action. So what do you think, Justin, as far as post-interview, and you got all this evergreen system of content, like what is appropriate on LinkedIn or other platforms as far as what to make a call to action, and like how frequently can you do that, or should you do that?
Well, we have a rule of thumb here internally for our clients, because we do the short form videos just standalone as a service offering, but also edit podcast clips. And what we say is, don't put the CTA in the video, so the video becomes evergreen, to your point. Put the CTA in the text part of the post.
Yeah.
Or if you do decide to do in a video, create 2 versions. Do one without a CTA, other than, if this content was interesting to you, like and subscribe or whatever. But that's usually, you're not going to get that from a podcast, because that would be weird. But that's the kind of CTAs we usually only recommend for videos, because you can always then you reuse that video indefinitely for other contexts. Because guess what? Your CTA may expire in 3 months or in 6 months. You might change the name of the workshop. You might change the date of the workshop. So don't hard code it into the video. Put it in the text post. I do it as often as it makes sense, which is, quite often.
Yeah.
And I don't worry about if it gets me a diminishing reach on LinkedIn. Some people say it does. There's this whole debate. Algorithm changes all the time. The point is, if you got a link, a workshop or whatever, put it in there and then mention that as a CTA at the end of your post.
Yep.
I like to do it like, hey, by the way, if this is interesting you, I'm doing a workshop on such and such a topic, more information here. Boop. So that's how I do that. Win had a question. Win Madry. He's seeing a ton. I'll read what Win says. I'm seeing a ton of what I assume are AI-led podcast guesting requests. Yes, I am too, Win. So trying to find ways to assess which ones to say yes to and not have to do too much research. I'll leave this one to you, Dustin. This is your area.
So this sounds like when you're the host in this scenario and you're getting pitched for people to be guests on your show, and correct us if I'm reading that wrong, but I'm also a host, and I'll say, before I even had a podcast, I receive these every day too, because they are AI driven and and they're basically just slop in most cases, right?
Mhm.
A couple rules of thumb, and so I see this from the side of being a guest and wanting to be on someone's show. Like, how do I stand out from that AI noise? How do I make myself in the 1 to 5% of these emails that you actually want to pay attention to? And so it's kind of the same dynamic, whether you're receiving them or you're sending them, right? And so really key for us is for our clients who want to guest on other people's shows, huge cardinal rule is we don't do this. Like, we don't spray and pray. We don't send one templated message to every host and hope that out of 1,000 two accidentally say yes, because that feels like that's the only way this would actually work. But that's what almost everyone does, including unfortunately a lot of agencies who are paid to do this for people. That's just like it's just a spray and pray automated approach. What we do is and this is what I want you to look for as you're receiving these, is every podcast that we want to be on is very intentionally chosen, and we're identifying a specific content gap that we want to fill for that audience. Now, it doesn't mean that every one of these is completely starting from scratch, because a lot of times you're filling the same content gap on multiple different podcasts. But when we reach out to a podcast, we're very specific about how we have a connection to that host and their show and their content. And then we get right into, here's the value I want to provide your audience. And it's copywritten bullets, right, that are written by humans, and they aren't AI, and so they don't sound like AI. And so I think if you're receiving these, you kind of know it when you see it. There's a smell test. What kind of subject line do they have? How do they open it? And what you'll start to see, how they open it, mean, what are the first couple sentences that you in that request? And if it looks and walks like AI, it is AI, and I just delete it.
Even if it's not really AI, honestly. I mean,
yeah.
What does that say about the guest if they sound like AI and they're not?
Exactly. That's why I guess what I was trying to get at. If it doesn't seem like a human authentic outreach, it's not. It may be human, but it's not authentic. And I think the realistic hit rate as receiving these is maybe 5 to 10% of them are things you should really honor and pay attention to, and most of them you're going to ignore. And yeah, that's kind of my quick answer. There's, if we were reviewing pitches, I could point at individual elements and be like, red flag, green flag.
Yeah.
But
join Dustin's community. You'll get to review pitches and see what to do with that question. There you go.
Oh yeah, we get pitches posted all the time in our community too, and it's usually because they're so egregiously bad that they become
the worst of the worst. Wall of shame. Well, my short answer to that, and this is just based on my own experience being on a podcast, and I get pitched about once, twice a week, not too much right now. It's a small podcast about content marketing. Is I first of all see if they're in B2B. Sometimes they don't do their homework and find out it has nothing to do with B2B.
Yeah,
it's about e-commerce or whatever. It's about what so that's an easy no. And then the second one is there anything in there that where they have something interesting with that they've solved a problem in the world of content marketing that looks like it. And I get AI pitches all the time, like, oh, whatever. To me personally, I'm like, well, this is the norm now. Whatever, I receive it, and I'm just gonna sift through the AI crap to find if there's any gold nuggets. So then if I see there's a gold nugget, I then step 3 is I look them up on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And if it looks like they're already, they're active on LinkedIn and they're posting the stuff, like they're walking the talk, then I move forward. There's a huge, in my mind, correlation between activity on LinkedIn and sharing your POV there and how good you will actually be on a podcast. I have not proven this yet.
Yeah,
but
especially in the B2B world that you're in. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. So that's my own experience. It's my own bias, perhaps my own LinkedIn colored goggles, but it takes me literally 60 seconds to do that. Do a quick check. Do I see the thing? Okay. Find them. And if they send me a LinkedIn to their profile, bonus points, because I don't have to look them up on LinkedIn and be like, is this the guy that talks about? Okay. Yeah. But that's rare, by the way. If you want underrated way to be in those, put your LinkedIn in there so they can see, oh, it's a real person. And this is what they're really like. Like, it's a huge authority builder for me, at least. So that's my tip. We got Natalia. Her question is podcast. It's a very high level question, but it's for you, Dustin. She, I had to look it up. She said, for my new line of business, I want to know if podcast, I'm paraphrasing what she said, but basically she's got a new line of business. She's a fractional CMO, and she's doing these things, delivering premium coffee solutions. It's Immersive Grounds is her company. I guess she gets a free shout out. And she was wondering if podcasting was a play for her. And I don't know, more about her company other than that it's delivering premium coffee solutions. Dustin, based off that, just a snippet of data, What do you think?
I mean, my default is yes, if, right? So what I
Yes,
would say is podcast guesting will work for you if you have an online business and you're not geographically constrained. So the places I've seen where podcast guesting is really not the right strategy is if you're like, oh, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and I can only work with people within 30 minutes of my door,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because podcast guesting is a more universally distributed channel. And the
Mhm.
other thing that would be difficult is if people have to interact with you in person to get value, right? So if I have a clothing store in St. Louis, podcast guesting is probably not the right strategy. But if you're delivering online services or even online products, like I got into podcast guesting through an e-commerce product that I was selling, but I was able to ship it internationally or nationally, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know with exactly your business, but Natalia, but you said you're a fractional CMO, which to me sounds like you are doing services, remotely, online, virtually, in other words, for your clients. And I don't know, maybe it sounds like you're doing marketing for maybe coffee companies or coffee shops, and
Mhm.
that can work great because if your coffee shops are regional, that's okay, right? It's like that you can't be geographically constrained and make this a great use of your time. So I would say yes. And the thing I hear a lot as like a FAQ is maybe I'm too niche for podcast guesting, right? Are there any podcasts
Mm.
that I could actually get on that are going to move the needle? And I can tell you, as someone who's had over 300 clients in every imaginable industry, I'd say that the more niche, the better.
Mm.
And we've
Okay.
had some really, really obscure niches, and podcast guesting has been an amazing strategy because it's actually easier because then you know which ones to focus on. And part of what we're always looking for is the podcast guest opportunity as the foundation. But on top of that, we're building relationships and partnerships and collaborations with other centers of influence. So you don't actually need that many podcasts as long as you get the right podcast appearances. And if you're really niche, it's easier to find the right ones, honestly.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, most likely Natalia. And if you want to go deeper and get more of a personal deep dive, just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn, and I'd love to hear more about your business and give you more of a thorough answer.
Good stuff. All right, those are the three main questions I saw that we got ahead of the session. If you have any more, you can post them. This will be posted to LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook. So if you watched it there, put your question in the comments or DM us. We're happy to answer your questions there. But yeah, that's the end of this webinar on systems for podcast guesting or getting the most from it.
All right.
Dustin, thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin. This was a lot of fun. I love the combination of emphasis areas and experiences here, and really grateful to spend some time with you, and really appreciate the questions that people had, and look forward to going deeper. Yeah, just DM me on LinkedIn. My name's pretty unique. So is Justin's. So I think you can find us pretty easy. And each of us in our respective areas would love to have a conversation with you if there's something you want to explore deeper.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here.